Out of all the major cities in America, it seems like St. Louis can never keep its sports teams. In the NFL, the Cardinals weren't that successful before they moved to Arizona, but the Rams were able to win the Super Bowl with their greatest show on turf offense, but then they moved back to LA in 2016. In the NBA, the Hawks won their only title in 1958 before moving to Atlanta. While they're still the MLB's Cardinals, the NHL's Blues, and more recently the UFL's BattleHawks, St. Louis also had an ABA team, the Spirits. But behind those burnt orange jerseys, there were a few relocations, and ownership issues put this team in jeopardy of folding on multiple occasions. While they never achieved major playoff success, they're probably the league's most recognizable team to a lot of fans, especially given the talent that played for them. They weren't included in the merger, but the Silna brothers brokered one of the best TV deals in sports history, as they were still making money almost 40 years after the team folded. Welcome to PZ Hoops, and this is another episode of ABA Tales. The story of the Spirits didn't start in St. Louis. It started in Texas. The Houston Mavericks were one of the ABA's first franchises, being formed on February 2nd, 1967. T.C. Morrow was the first owner of the team, and he hired former NBA star Slater Martin to be the first head coach. But the Mavericks were doomed from the beginning, as during the first draft, Slater was sent to represent the team, only to find out that Morrow hadn't paid the required bond of $30,000, so Houston couldn't draft any players. By the time Slater was able to get the money, the first 4 rounds of the draft had passed, forcing him to recruit players from the Eastern Professional Basketball League and nearby colleges. For its first season, the Mavericks had a starting lineup that featured Willie Somerset, Art Becker, Larry Lentz, Will Frazier, and DeWitt Maynard. Houston didn't start out too well, as they lost 7 of their first 8 games. They had a lot of offensive issues, with the lowest shooting percentage, the lowest free throw rate, and the lowest amount of points scored. They weren't that much better on defense, but a few of their players showed some promise. Willie averaged 22 points a game, while Art and DeWitt made the league's first All-Star game. The Mavericks finished 29-49, but they were able to sneak into the playoffs, facing the Dallas Chaparrals in the semifinals. Willie went off, dropping 42 points and 11 rebounds in Game 1, but Dallas won by a point. He put up 40 in Game 2, but Dallas had 4 20-point scores, winning in a blowout. He cooled off in Game 3 as Art stepped up with 26 and 10, but John Beasley dropped 31 and 11 to eliminate the Mavericks. This first season was a wash, as the city of Houston didn't care about the team, as they averaged about 1,500 fans a game. On most nights, they were lucky to get 500 people to show up. TC was one of the richest owners in the league, so he wouldn't give up on his team so easily. He tried to sign the biggest college stars from the University of Houston, Elvin Hayes and Don Chaney, but they both opted to play in the NBA. After he still couldn't get enough talent to compete, TC gave up the team, and now the Mavericks were owned by the ABA. Commissioner George Mikan was concerned about the state of the team, so he sent several players there in order to draw more interest from the fans. But Coach Martin didn't like this interference from his former Lakers teammate, so he resigned after 12 games, leaving Art Becker to be a player coach for a few games before Jim Weaver was hired to take over. Houston's low attendance was even lower this year, so according to many sources, the team padded the gate to make their figures look better. The roster was disorganized, as 22 different players suited up for the Mavericks. Willie Somerset was having a career year, but he was traded mid-season for Laverne Tart. But the most infamous moment happened in the season finale against New York, as the teams played in front of only 89 people, but the Mavericks dropped 149 points in the win. As you might expect, the Mavericks were terrible, as their 23-55 record was the second worst in the league. The team was purchased mid-season by Congressman Jim Gardner, who had intentions to move the team to North Carolina. The state was thought to have enough major metropolitan areas that could support a team, so the Carolina Cougars would try something new. They would be a regional franchise, playing games in Greensboro, Charlotte, and Raleigh, as Bones McKinney was hired to coach. The team was completely overhauled in 1969, as Bob Verga, Gene Littles, Doug Moe, and Larry Mahaffey were the top players. Bob had the ultimate green light and was one of the top scorers in the league. The Cougars had 4 double-digit scores, as their 42-42 record got them a semifinal matchup with the Pacers. Carolina had a horrible Game 1, shooting 38% in a blowout loss. Bob dropped 35 points on 50% shooting in Game 2, but Mel Daniels put up 23 points and 21 rebounds to give Indiana a close win. George Peoples put up 14 points and 22 rebounds, but John Barnhill came out of nowhere, scoring 25 points with 3 3-pointers as the Pacers won by 9 to go up 3-0. Game 4 was the closest game of the series, but the Pacers shot 44 free throws, winning by 4 points to complete the sweep. Even though the Cougars lost, the support for the team was there, especially in Greensboro, as they averaged 6,000 fans a game. Doug Moe was traded to the Capitals in the offseason for Gary Brads and Ira Harge, while they also signed the high flyer Joe Caldwell, who was an all-star with the Atlanta Hawks. He quickly became the Cougars' best player, averaging 23 points and making the all-star team. George Layman was the top 3-point shooter, leading the league in makes, attempts, and 3-point percentage. 7 players averaged double figures, but Coach McKinney was fired after a 17-25 start. Jerry Steele would take over, but the Cougars had the same record to finish the season at 34-50, missing the playoffs. Another crazy moment occurred on November 14th against the Pacers, as a cattle show had taken place in the arena the day before, leaving a huge swarm of flies buzzing around the court during the game. The Cougars added Jim McDaniels, Ted McClain, Wendell Ladner, and George Carter in 1971. Jim was having a breakout season, averaging 26 points and 14 rebounds, but he suddenly quit the team and would sign with the Supersonics. There was still a lot of inconsistency with the roster, as 19 different guys played for them. Without Jim's production, the Cougars really didn't stand a chance, finishing 35-49, missing the playoffs again. Cougars fans would be optimistic in 1972, as they were able to sign superstar Billy Cunningham from the 76ers. Former ABA player Larry Brown was hired to coach, while Doug Moe was an assistant. They also brought in Matt Calvin, giving them 3 all-star caliber players. Mike Lewis, Tom Owens, and Steve Jones were valuable pieces as well. The Cougars were rolling, beating the Celtics in the preseason and winning 8 of their first 11 regular season games, occupying the top spot in the standings, and they would stay on top for the rest of the season. Attendance figures jumped by 40%, including a December 30th game against Kentucky with 14,000 fans. Billy Cunningham had an MVP season, leading the team in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Caldwell and Calvin were all-stars, as Carolina won 57 games this year, as their whole organization added some hardware, as Larry Brown was named Coach of the Year, and Carl Scheer was named Executive of the Year. The Cougars faced the Nets in the semifinals, as Billy dropped 25, 15, and 9 to help Carolina take Game 1. Johnny Baum had a great performance in Game 2, with 26 points on 10 of 17 shooting to help the Nets even the series. Matt Calvin dropped 28 points and 5 assists to take the 2-1 series lead. Carolina's Big Three combined for 74 points to narrowly take Game 4, and the Cougars dropped 136 points in Game 5 to win their first playoff series in franchise history. The division finals brought a much tougher test with the Kentucky Cardinals. But Carolina had a 3-2 series lead going into Game 6, but they shot 41% as a team in a blowout loss. Game 7 would be a home game for Carolina, but they chose to host it at the Charlotte Coliseum, a decision that disappointed fans in Greensboro. Carolina picked the wrong day to go cold, as 4 of their starters shot below 42%, leading to them losing by double digits, ending their dream season. The fans didn't have a reason not to believe that the Cougars would compete for a title again in 1973, but it just wasn't meant to be. Billy only played in 32 games due to a kidney ailment. Dennis Wychick, one of their best shooters, missed 2 months with a severe ankle sprain, and Mike Lewis didn't return until March, after missing a year and a half with a torn Achilles. Without their leader, the Cougars struggled to win games, but Matt Calvin had another all-star campaign. Ted McClain was a nice surprise, as he really showed his potential in the defensive end, recording an ABA record 12 steals on the day after Christmas. He also broke a season record for steals, as he made the all-star team and the first team all-defense. Despite all the injuries, the Cougars still finished with a respectable 47-37 record, facing the Cardinals in the semifinals. Billy still wasn't fully healthy, so Carolina didn't stand a chance. Artis Gilmore did whatever he wanted in this series, averaging 30 points, 19 rebounds, and 4.5 blocks on 67% shooting as the Cougars were swept. The Carolina experiment was turning out to be a success, as the team was winning and the seats were filled, but there were rumblings of a merger with the NBA, and a regional franchise wouldn't be a viable option. None of the home cities were big enough to support a franchise on their own, plus the travel expenses involved in dealing with 3 different cities were way too high. So on July 17, 1974, owner Terry Munchak sold the Cougars to an ownership group led by brothers Ozzie and Daniel Silna. The team would be moving to St. Louis and be renamed the Spirits.
Pro basketball returns to St. Louis. The Spirits bring the ABA's red, white, and blue ball, its 3-point shot, and a lot of high hopes to a city accustomed to great sports teams. The Spirits owners have a message for that city. They'll bring exciting basketball to St. Louis in record time. Less than a year later, that promise has been fulfilled.
St. Louis brought in a rookie radio announcer named Bob Costas to commentate their games, as they also had a mostly brand new roster heading into their first season, including Fly Williams, Gus Gerard, Goo Kennedy, Freddie Lewis, Maurice Lucas, and most famously, Marvin Barnes from Providence. Bob McKinnon would be the first head coach, But a month into the season, Marvin would go AWOL. After a few days, it was discovered that he was at a pool hall in Dayton, Ohio. He was unhappy with his contract and he left the team to send a message. Although Marvin played amazing when he came back, Joe Caldwell, one of the few holdovers from Carolina, would see his time with the team come to an end. The Spirits front office felt that Joe had encouraged Marvin to walk out, and he was suspended, as the team described the incident as a failure to conduct himself in a manner consistent with his contractual obligation to the Spirits. Joe would never play another game for St. Louis, but Maurice was an impact player early on, especially with his tenacity on the glass and solid mid-range jumper. The Spirits couldn't guard anybody though, as they finished with a 32-52 record, but this was still enough for a semifinal matchup against Dr. J and the Nets. Marvin dropped 41-12 in Game 1, but the Nets would win by 6. The Spirits would win the next 3 games, as Marvin dropped 23 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 blocks in the Game 4 blowout win. Game 5 went down to the wire, but Freddie Lewis hit a jumper with 3 seconds left to win the series, completing the upset. The Spirits faced the Cardinals in the division finals, but they would meet their match. An ankle injury to Freddie really hurt their chances, as even though Marvin averaged 31 points and 12 rebounds, the Spirits were eliminated in 5 games. The 1975 season would be a huge disappointment for St. Louis, but they did add some more talent, signing Don Chaney and M.L. Carr, while also adding Moses Malone and Ron Boone after the Utah Stars folded in December. Moses would only play in 43 games though, as he arrived in St. Louis with a broken foot and a desire for a new contract. Maurice Lucas was gone as well, as he was traded to Kentucky for Caldwell Jones mid-season. Marvin would miss some games also due to a court case, as he was being sued for hitting his college teammate in the head with a lug wrench. With all this roster movement, the fans abandoned the team, as it wasn't uncommon to see only 400 people at the St. Louis arena. The Spirits tried to make a late season playoff push, but it wasn't successful, as a 35-win season was 4 games shy. The Spirits were set to move again, as a deal was in place to move to Salt Lake City as the Utah Rockies. But when the NBA would only accept 4 out of the 6 teams left for the merger, the Silna brothers wanted to make their money back on their investment. They would sign the deal of a lifetime with the NBA. In exchange for folding the team, the brothers would receive 1/7 of all TV revenue from the Pacers, Nets, Nuggets, and Spurs. The NBA tried to buy them out of the deal in 1982, offering $5 million over 8 years, but negotiations stopped after the brothers asked for $8 million over 5 years. As of 2012, the brothers had made $255 million from this deal. A 30 for 30 was made in 2013 called Free Spirits, where it showed the Silnas attempting to sue the NBA for hundreds of millions more dollars, presumably for a cut of the NBA League Pass and VOD revenue. In 2014, the brothers reached an agreement with the NBA to greatly reduce the payments and take a lump sum of $500 million. Despite their team never playing a game for 40 years, the brothers have made more than $750 million from TV revenue. The St. Louis Spirits are one of the more recognizable teams in ABA history, as their burnt orange jerseys were one of the more unique designs in the league. But behind the glory, there were a lot of rough times, as terrible fan support in Houston led to a move to Carolina, where the new idea of a regional franchise was tried out, and the Cougars were 1 game away from the ABA Finals in 1973. But injuries and a lack of expenses would spell doom for the promising team, which was disheartening since the fans were actually coming out to the games. After they moved to St. Louis, they hoarded a lot of talent, as they made a surprising run to the division finals in their first season. But after this, the league was in jeopardy and the Spirits would be no more. But the owners were able to secure an unprecedented TV deal and made close to $1 billion without ever playing a game. Thank you guys for watching, I really appreciate y'all. To be honest, when I went into this about the Spirits, I had never heard of the Houston Mavericks until I researched. I'm like, oh, there was a whole nother team? They went from this to the Cougars to the Spirits. All the talent they had to play for that franchise. You got Billy Cunningham, Joe Caldwell, Matt Calvin, Marvin Barnes, Maurice Lucas, Ron Boone, Freddie Lewis, Moses Malone. All these superstars that played for this team in a span of like 2 years. That's crazy how they were able to get a deal like that done. They made $750 million. That team never played a game. Like just off the TV revenue from the 4 teams that went to the NBA. And it's even crazier because all 4 of these teams have been relatively successful. Like they've all at least made the finals, and you got the Nuggets and the Spurs that won championships. The Pacers were close to winning a few days ago. So all these teams have been successful. So they've just been raking in the money while they've been probably doing other things. That's crazy. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate y'all. I'm glad you guys really like when I do these team-based videos. Everyone just thinks of ABA and just thinks, oh, Julius Erving, David Thompson, or Artis Gilmore. That's all they think of. They don't even think of all the other teams. It was all these other different players and personalities that came into the league. It's a lot of stories that have yet to be told. I really appreciate y'all for the support. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Turn my post notifications on if you haven't already. I upload pretty frequent, so definitely have those notifications on. Check out all my playlists. I have organized every one of my videos in the playlist to make it easier for you to watch. Please be safe. Have a great day. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.